Welcome, Jess, to Dublin Comic Con. Welcome virtually to March 2023. Thank you for joining us live today in the Convention Centre, Dublin. So today's topic is mainly just discussing, we're here with Pulse College Games and Animation Campus based in Dublin, Ireland. And our main focus is towards those who are looking to pursue working in the industry in many different forms, from narrative, character design, animation, and of course you bring a unique facet to it because you have experience in the realm of voiceover and motion capture as well. So many of us are aware, well, what this is, but what actually goes into it from that point of view is something we'd like to discuss a little bit more. So just to begin, Jess, what's your background? So how did you break into the industry? What did you study? Was this the original roadmap plan that you go to college and then go into? Was it a different story that unfolded?
So I am originally from Swansea in South Wales, and I went to school there, went to a lovely comprehensive, same as Russell T Davies, who brought back Doctor Who. And I was actually quite a shy child. I was, just did very academic, but the idea of doing drama terrified me. And then this film came out called Ice Age, and you know the story, Owen, but I absolutely loved it. I was in, I think, year 8 or year 9 at the time, and I got the special DVD that showed them behind the scenes in the booth. And I just had this absolute epiphany of, oh my gosh, that's a job. That is a job that I could do. And so I looked into it, started researching it, and it sort of seemed that the standard route would be drama school and you become an actor to become a voice actor. And I know that's not everyone's route, but I thought, okay, let's give this a go. And so I suddenly told my parents in sixth form that I wanted to study drama at university, and they were kind of like, what? This is a bit of a curveball. So we made a pact, and I did French and drama, and I had the best time. I studied theatre in France for a year in Paris, and then came out of university and thought, no, I think this acting thing is maybe something to pursue. So I applied for drama school, was very lucky to get into ALRA in London and studied there. And it just completely cemented my love for voice acting. I loved it so much. I had a fantastic teacher there called Peter Darney, who was gold. And then, so that was, I graduated in 2014, but it took 3 years for me to get my first voice job. It's quite a tough industry to break into. And so it was with, it was a running app called Zombies Run with 6 to Start. And it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had working. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. And I've gone from playing, theatre-wise, I've done a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of outdoor theatre. I've just come off the back of a year-long tour of the UK and Ireland with Gangster Granny. But with the voice side, it sort of snowballed, and I went from playing sort of background characters, NPCs, to getting playable characters and having a lovely narrative to play with. So it's and here we are.
And full disclaimer, I know nothing that goes into acting, but one thing I do hear is about acting being kind of like, 50% of acting is reacting or something like that. I know nothing along those lines, but when you're doing voiceover work, then I know some folks do it in a sound booth, so you might not actually meet your fellow actors. Now, in animation, sometimes the preferred method is to record audio first, because the animators then can take reference from the actors and it's easier for the dub. But a lot of animation now is the dialogue's recorded first and then animated afterwards. For yourself, you mentioned you have experience like in theatre performance and live performance, but you also do it for games as well. So how does that translate then? What's the translation of that into, like, from stage to live performance to recording? Was that a difficult transition for you to make, or is it just more use of the imagination, I suppose?
Definitely a lot more use of the imagination, and also a lot less rehearsal time. So as I'm sure you can appreciate, a lot of the time the scripts are sort of still in development whilst you're recording. So you will quite often get the script when you get into the booth. And obviously with theatre, you have maybe I think the National Theatre, they have a fantastic like 2-month rehearsal period to kind of get into character, to find, to explore, to physicalize and work through and work with others and bounce off them. But when you're most of the time when you're doing voice work, it is just you, and you've suddenly you've got a director the other side of the screen and a technician, and they're just kind of explaining the world, and they'll give you, and often because of NDAs, you don't even know what game it is. So you're just kind of like, cool, okay, love the concept. And they'll just talk you through what your character's motivations are. So it's kind of, you fast forward that rehearsal period into a very short summary, and then you've got to just give the same amount of performance, like there and then. And so one of my first voiceover jobs, I was playing multiple non-playable characters with a fab company called Linja Sound, and the client didn't quite know what voices they wanted. So I was then pinging around the UK. I was aging down and up and all this kind of stuff. And it really, at first I was like, oh my gosh, how far can I go? What can I do? And now I just kind of go like, how wild do you want me to go with this? And I'll just play around and I'll flip between accents and worlds. And that gave such a solid foundation. I mean, for me, theatre gave such a great foundation for voice work. And it's been mentioned by a few directors as well, that they love working with theatre performers because they've got the stamina. Like for Dark Tide, there was a lot of shouting, an awful lot of shouting, and they're really good. They look after your voice, but it's very much, you have to support, you have to project, you have to be able to sustain that. The longest session I did was 3 hours of army barks. So the transition from theatre, having that vocal warm up under my belt, having that, I've got a bit of a reputation as having lungs of leather because I've shouted into fields with outdoor theatre for so many years. So that transition has really helped, but it was a bit jarring not having a rehearsal, having this summary of the world and the character, and then going, right, cool, here we go. And it's like, oh my gosh, wow, we're away. But then I think, especially with the characters that you have more than one session with, you kind of grow with the recordings, you grow with each session, and you kind of develop more nuance. And I feel that the more you have that opportunity to do that in the booth, the quicker it just becomes snappier. You kind of go, okay, yes, this is the world, this is it, da da da. And it just becomes easier. And if you're working with a great team, great directors, that just cherry on the cake.
Have you ever had that experience where you've worked on a project, but again, you haven't been in the same room with your fellow actors, and then later you meet them and you're like, hey, we actually worked together on a project? Does that ever happen where you're just like, oh, you've worked with someone, but you haven't met them yet? It's kind of crazy how that can happen in the pipeline of production.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing how you can be crossing paths with someone coming in and out of the studio. And you don't know, they could be someone that you're hearing the voice for in the booth sort of 5 minutes later, and you have no idea. It's so strange. And like, one of the things that I do love about acting is the collaboration and working with people. And it can feel a little bit lonely, but sometimes you are sort of lucky to get if someone's recorded before you, then you get their voice coming through the can, so you can sort of bounce off that a bit. But yeah, there was actually a guy, I was in a studio doing a mocap job that I can't talk about yet. And this chap was saying it was his first session there. And, I was chatting to him for a bit whilst he was getting suited up, and it is an experience getting into a mocap suit. And he was saying, oh, this is new. And so we were having a lovely chat. And then he was leaving a studio a few days later as I was walking in. And I went, Ben? And he didn't recognize me out of the suit. And I don't know if I should be flattered or not. But it turns out we were then working on the same project, and it was his voice coming through my ears as I went into that next session. So, it's such a strange world, and I love it.
It's often like what they say, it's a small industry, isn't it? Everyone gets to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. There was another game that I did, and the voice came through, G2 Fighter, which came out a few years ago. And a voice came through. I was like, why do I know that voice? and it was Doug Cockle who voiced The Witcher. And I was like, oh my gosh, do I get to meet him? No, I did not get to meet him at all. But yeah, it was just like this, it's sort of here, you get to meet them.
Yeah, that's always amazing when, you know, I have a friend as well who works in industry, and it's the same with the NDA. It's they work on this major project and I can see them bursting to talk about it. And then so I was like, they have to wait until, I don't know if it's the same for the games industry, but it's usually when a trailer is released is usually when they can finally talk about it, but they can't breathe a word until then.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's normally the case, but there's a game that I'm part of that's meant to be coming out this summer. And they're very tight. They're like, even though the trailers are out, it's like, no one say that they're like, the newer characters don't say that you're involved. And it's just like, oh, I really want this. It was one of my favorite experiences, and I'm bursting to talk, but got to respect the NDA.
For contracts like NDAs and such, what experience do you have? Is there someone to like talk you through that? Do you have like a solicitor to read through? Because I'm just imagining, as a total novice to it all myself, suddenly I'm focused on trying to get a job. Then when I get it, I'm suddenly presented with this paperwork. And then like, what do you look for in it? Like, is there something that you've learned in time to be savvy around, like, oh, this is what this point means, this is what to look for here? Or do they talk you through that? Or do you just learn that as through experience, as you know, as you get a few jobs under your belt, you just learn as you progress?
A little of column A, a little of column B. I mean, I'm very lucky that I've got a voice agent who is happy to kind of talk through if I've got any questions or if something isn't clear. But generally, NDAs are quite standard. So the first time I sat there and I sat with a cup of tea and I just read through the first NDA I had through. I was like, right, okay, clause 13.7, okay, 17, okay. And I was just like, right, okay. And yeah, now it's kind of, you're used to the standard, like the sort of the norm. So anything different sort of pops out to you. But yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure how much I'm allowed to say about what's on an NDA, but
yeah, but what we do is we say nothing. We'll say nothing. That's the safest bet.
Yeah, it is a very sort of fascinating thing, because again, like theatre, you just don't have it, and that is my other main source of income. So yeah, it's a very different process, and especially when it's like a AAA game, there's a lot more to consider and a lot more to sort of, yeah, just have at the front of your mind, and just like, you can't say this and wait and do it. Yeah.
It's always interesting from teaching animation students. I teach modules like business and entrepreneurship and brand and marketing, but we're teaching them subjects, elements in the module, I should say, like cash flow, because, you know, they need to learn how to balance the books. And then they might think, well, I'm going to be an animator, but then they might lead a project one day. And these are kind of like the auxiliary skills you pick up. That's why, you know, when you're studying at third level, why the essays are still important, and, you know, the academic reading and writing, because whether you care for it or not, it will find its way back into your career. We have a couple of game devs present in the room as well. So they'll probably, and we'll go to Q&A in just a moment, but they'll probably be interested in, is there any tips from the perspective of you, the performer, when it comes into, you know, delivering a performance, or what you look for in the game? Is there anything that you've seen? What sings to you like a game? Like, were you much of a game player yourself, first of all, before you got into VR? Like, did you play video games much, or even board games?
Well, I've actually just bought a PS5. The last console I had was PS1. So I played like the proper old school, like Rayman and Tomb Raider and that sort of stuff way back when. But I've just started playing God of War, and even just getting used to the controller, it's so different. I was like, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. So I kind of slipped back into gaming because I'm in the world and I want to honor the fact that I'm working in this industry, and I love researching, and I'm getting, there was one day I sort of started at 11:30 and I looked at my phone and it was like 3:15, and I was like, how has the time flown? So I think, yeah, if in terms of narrative, something that can suck you in to the point of losing time is is brilliant. I think having a clear narrative structure, characters who have great motivation and who are exciting. and this is probably just me, but like for female characters, to describe a character as strong for a man, it's normally about physical strength, but for women, it's normally about their resilience. And I just feel play with, think of other adjectives for female characters. That's something that's like it just comes up, get time and again. She's strong. I'm like, cool. What else is she? Tell me more. Give me more depth. What else is she? Is she flawed? Is she like a rule breaker? Like what? Tell me more. Like, I think that's, and it is definitely getting better, but it's just something like a buzzword that comes up again and again. I'm like, cool. What else is she?
No, that's a fair point, absolutely. And I just want to circle back around. Then I want to talk about other facets of your career as well. There's maybe some about your writing and theatre work as well before we throw open the Q&A. But just before we move on from the VO work and mocap work, you just mentioned about having an agent, that you're lucky to have one. And I know this, I'm more familiar with from a publishing point of view, but that can be tough, that trying to, find an agent. And what goes into that? What you expected from a portfolio point of view? Or is there a portfolio or a show reel? Like what goes into it? If someone here has aspirations to go out and seek an agent, like what steps do you recommend that they, consider?
So I actually got my first voice agent in lockdown. So that's fairly recently. And it was because I built a booth in my garden with my partner. And because of lockdown, everyone was in isolation. So having a home studio was all the rage. And so I managed to get a very, very good agent. And that opened the door to a whole new world of voice work for me. Before that, I'd done a lot of indie stuff. And what's great, though, I did a lot of work with the students in training at places like NFTS, Met Film School. And one of their projects, what's it called? Covert Operations, COVRT Operation, got nominated for a student BAFTA in games. And it really was fantastic to work on that. It was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it's just kind of before, like, to get an agent, you've kind of got to have either profile as an actress or actor, or credits under your belt. And it's kind of like the sort of chicken and egg. If I don't have an agent, can I get credits? And you absolutely can. There are absolutely great opportunities. I did a lot of sort of smaller games, like the Zombies Run one. That was through another website, this website called Mandy.com. I think it's called Mandy now. No, Casting Call Pro, and it's now called Mandy. And so you don't have to have an agent to apply for that sort of level. And then building up that experience, I thought, yeah, this is definitely something I want to do. So I got some reels made. And the standard industry expectation is a commercial reel and a narrative reel. That was a few years ago. Now it's animation reels, gaming reels, like audiobook reel, like da-da-da. And so you can really sort of specialize in what you want to do. And so I got a gaming reel made, which piqued the interest of my agent, who saw, home studio, and she said, "Oh, okay, this is," and yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, the expectation is that you have credits before you join an agency. Normally, if you're, I don't know, Tom Hiddleston or I don't know, Michaela Cole, you'll be fine.
I think that's a good point as well. Where you mentioned like it was a student BAFTA nominated project. That's why it's good we always encourage our students the extracurricular activities. We do like host the Global Game Jam is one of the events that we host and such here. And that's good because even if it's not going to be your commercial breakout, it's sufficient material for the portfolio to make, the potential agents or future employers aware of the work that you have as well. So it's great to hear. I'm going to use this as a point when I'm encouraging my students to participate in extracurricular events, and I'm like, see, the system works. And I just want to, just one last quick question, and then I'll just move on to just other facets of your career as well. But you just mentioned about your home recording booth that you set up. Do you think now there's an expectation post-COVID that if you're going to embark in a career in VO work, that they expect perhaps that you're set up to record from home and record remotely? Has there been, do you feel, a kind of shift towards that, expectancy, or is everything more or less, it could be split or back in the studio?
I think it's split now, obviously during COVID and even sort of the few months after the world was opening up again, the expectation was a home recording studio, you know, high tech, high standard equipment. And there were situations where companies would send out equipment for people to set up at home so that they, you know, could still record. But I think now it's just, it's interesting because with the acting side, self-tapes are still huge for auditions. And so normally first round, you'd be in the room, but now it's kind of second round and sometimes even, you know, final stages, that's when you get into the room. But I think with recording, just because if you've got however many people, say 30 people on a project and they've all got slightly different setups, it's a nightmare for the tech team to match up all the different audio and get the levels right and everything. So having that consistency from the tech side is important, but also, you know, it's, I think having people in the room and having the director right there, it's quite helpful. Although one thing I have noticed is directors and movement directors tend to be working more remotely than the performers now. Because they're like, oh, I can work from home, that's great. And so it's kind of flipped.
Okay, interesting. So that's one I didn't expect. Okay, so they work remotely now. And so I just want to move on and talk about some other projects you're involved in. I'll let you lead the way in this one because I don't want to put you on the spot for anything that you can't, I don't want to talk about, but I'm just aware that you also, as well as being a performer, are developing writing projects for performance as well. I was wondering if you're at liberty to share some of the projects that you have in development, your personal projects.
Absolutely. Yes, so I am currently, as you know, Owen, writing a play about the political prisoners in Kilmainham Gaol from the 1920s. I've got Irish heritage, and a family friend from Kilkenny very kindly gave me some letters written to his ancestor who was a political prisoner there. And it's been something I've been so keen to make sure it's as sort of historically accurate as possible. So I've done a lot of research. Brian, one of the curators at Kilmainham, has very, very kindly given me a private tour for like, I think it was 2.5 hours behind the scenes at Kilmainham, seeing all the graffiti that's still there, you know, all the different spaces that are referred to in these letters. So it was incredible. And thanks to funding, I've been able to do some research and development sessions, which are workshops with performers using the letters as impetus. And so, yeah, it's going to have its first iteration in the summer, which is the 100-year anniversary since the letters were written, which is, it feels pretty special. And yeah, I'm about 1/3 of the way through, but because it's such a big cast and I'm still determined to make it a big cast, it's quite tricky in terms of staging, in terms of making sure people have fair like dialogue and, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I will get there, but yeah, I'm hoping to do a few more R&D sessions, research and development sessions in April. And then, yeah, we'll have it on in July, and hopefully, Owen, you will be able to come over and see it.
Absolutely. I've been really looking forward to the project, and very excited to see what comes of it as well. And just having the experience of, you know, being a performer and now writing, are you drawing much upon your experience as a performer? Does that inform your writing? If so, what are the elements? Has it been that perhaps when you read a script you went, oh, I wish it was like this way when you perform it? Like what has it been? What's the influence been?
It's so also like part of my writing story is when I first moved to London and I was a poor teenager, I used to review theatre as a kind of way of seeing more theatre. And I feel like that side of it, as well as my career, has really helped me to realize what I enjoy about theatre and what I don't enjoy about writing. And like, you know, how different characters, like how they interact with each other, what their motivation is. I think that's a really like key point for me, because if you've just got a character who is basically there to help your plot, it just feels a bit, ooh. And I just want to make sure everyone, like, you know, all characters have their purpose. Another thing, I've mentioned Michaela Cole already, but something that I love about her, just as a little sort of side quest, she will give every single character in her shows a name. Even if it's like bartender who has one line, they will have a name, because it's just about kind of giving the character and the performer that kudos. And it's like, you are a relevant part of this world. You're not just sort of a piece that we need. It's, you know, to just further the story. And so I just think that's really key. I'm trying to think what else. I think reading scripts, you see what makes you go, this is exciting, this is different, this is, you know, oh, I love the way that this has happened, and oh, I didn't see this coming, and you know, that kind of thing. And the same with TV. Like there's some great like TV and film out at the moment, and it's sort of seeing how the narrative flows, how like the beats in the story are clear, that kind of thing. It's all fed into me wanting to go, yeah, I want to give writing a go, and you know, my first full-length play, let's see if I can incorporate those aspects I've learned along the road.
Awesome. Can't wait for it. Okay, so I've been going on quite a bit here, and we're just nearly closing in on the 30-minute mark. So before we wrap up, are there any questions from the floor that anyone wants to offer up? Yeah, go ahead.
Just speak.
Yeah, if you want to come up and speak. Yeah. Actually, no, you might have to come up closer to the mic. So if you want to come up, sorry about this, our microphone system is a bit crazy. If you come up to about here, just here, yeah, and if you say, hopefully, Jess, yeah, come a little bit closer, yeah, and go ahead, yeah.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Very good. I have maybe a couple of questions, but let's start with the one that are more relevant, let's say, for me and my friend that are also here. You said that you've done a lot of indie games, the voice acting for indie games. And besides, we understand the experience that it was pretty cool. Did you play any of them yourself?
No, I haven't. That's why I've just moved into a new flat, and so I've got a console so that I can actually start to play them. Because I really, like, as I said, I love being in this world, and it's interesting to see the end result of all the hard work that everyone's put in.
Cool, no problem. My other question is then, even though you didn't play, but you were a part of it, do you think that, and I guess you will agree, the live voice acting in a game will bring the quality of the game much higher than just making the effects? Okay, there are several things, like if you're doing with the indie developers, they usually don't have the money and they go for like the cheapest option. But I guess you would agree that it brings up the quality of the game itself when it's somebody designed by the professional voice actor than just us looking online for free sounds.
I think so, yeah. And I think what can be done, which helps sort of everyone involved, is if you target like drama schools, because it's people who are learning their craft as well as, you know, as well as the indie games. It's like, you know, you are kind of getting people who are still good quality and who have an understanding of how to use their voice and how to sort of switch emotional gears very, very easily. So it's not just kind of, I've seen a lot of social media shout outs for people, and it's like, do you know what, that you can get raw talent. And I've got a lot of friends who didn't train, who, you know, they don't do acting, they just do voice work, and they are phenomenal. They are really, really talented. So I think it's kind of, I would never say like rule out people who haven't trained. I would never say that at all. But in terms of, you know, if you know that, if I don't actually know the drama school system in Ireland, but if you've got that resource, then absolutely tap into it. And, you know, if people are wanting to get into voice work and are performing and haven't yet broken in, like, indie games is such a great place, because you are going to get talent, you are going to get people who are excited to work on the project and who are going to give it their all. And so it becomes a much more exciting collaboration. It's not just about sort of the talent in front of the microphone, it's who you're working with, and do you enjoy working with them? Are they easy to direct? Do they understand? Are they bringing something to the table? So I think, yeah, there are lots of elements to consider with that one. Sorry, quite a long-winded answer. I hope it's helpful.
No, it's good. And I guess you would recommend it to them. Definitely. Can I ask one more?
Yeah, sure, go ahead, yeah.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking all of this is because I had the chance to actually meet one actor that is really famous here in Ireland, and then we spoke a little bit about games and, you know, voice acting, and I just out of curiosity asked him, like, would you like to work a little bit with us, like to do something? And I did send him like a little fragile, just to do something to see if we test it, if it's working. It's not, it's quite a work anyway. But I sent him some email, and then I met him again, and I asked him, like, did you take a look? And he said, yes, I'm working on it, and that's all cool. But I asked him like, but are you bored? Do you like this, you know, like as a thing? Because I don't know, we don't know each other that well. And he told me like, man, I'm actually very happy that you sent me this, because this is part of my career that I was not actually developing that much, and I always wanted to, but you know, there was no like opportunity. So when it comes to that, I'm actually curious, when you're not working on the projects, but you're working on yourself as a practicing, I guess it takes a lot of practice. Like, what is the standard procedure for you? Like, you warm up? Do you copy somebody else's voice? You do yours? You do a combination of it? Like, how your working day looks like when you're working on training yourself or keeping the shape of your voice, which I guess it has to be done.
So for me, I actually had a very interesting chat with a couple of other voice artists just yesterday, and I was saying how I like warm up, and especially with things like Warhammer, where you are just shouting like "Plague or Grim," all this kind of stuff. To sustain that, you have to look after your voice, and for me, it's my career. So I'm very keen to warm up whenever I have, especially when I've got a vocally heavy session. I know other actresses in theatre and performers, but there's one person I've got in mind, Charlotte Palmer, who, if you ever get the chance to work with her, she's an actress over here in Britain, absolutely fantastic. She's amazing. But you know, I did an outdoor tour with her. We were all there projecting, testing, making sure that, especially in the different spaces, that we could be heard. Her warm-up was genuinely this. She'd sit, she'd put her makeup on, she'd get into costume, and she'd go, "Right, everyone, have a great show." That was her. And I was like, Mike, and you could hear her clear as a bell across a field. Like, she was incredible. So it kind of depends, you know, what you've got to work with. But for me, I warm up. In terms of other skills, I love learning accents. I use phonetics a lot. I also did a fantastic workshop with a woman called Yvonne Morley, who gave me a toolkit that I use to this day. And it's about the ingredients for a voice, and it's pitch, pace, tone, resonance, and age. And you kind of tap into those different qualities to create an ingredients for a character. And I think when I started out, I was very much, I'd sit there methodically writing it down. Now it's become muscle memory. So if someone says to me, we need this kind of voice, it's like, oh, I've already got that in the bank. Boom, there it is. So it's kind of, I will always like to learn and grow and develop, but like I've got this toolkit that I always refer back to and will use in any situation I'm given. There are situations in games where I've been told, we want this as a voice reference. I also do a lot of translations from Chinese to English. And so they say, we want this voice quality, but with your accent. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, interesting. And so it's then being able to be elastic with that as well, and not just my idea of a character. It's someone else's idea that I've got to honor. So it's having that toolkit there that lovely Yvonne gave me. To just go, right, okay, so that's the pitch, that's the tone is this is like the pace of it, da, 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 da. And so you kind of break it down, and then you have to build it back up into a character rather than being able to hear those cogs, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on.
Sure. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, very welcome.
Super, thank you. Do we have any other questions on the floor? extensive Q&A there. Awesome. Well, listen, thanks so much again, Jess, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we see you over here in person for a future show. And just before we let you go, where can folks go to find out more about your work and support you in your career?
Oh, wonderful. So I am at Jess Nesling on Instagram and Twitter. Whenever I am allowed to post about games, I will definitely be posting on there. And I've got the games that I am allowed to talk about are available on IMDb, which is sort of 15-year-old Jess is going crazy that she's got an IMDb page. And yeah, I think my website is in development at the moment, but I will definitely be getting more up about the work that I'm doing and also my writing. So jessnesling.co.uk is hopefully one to watch.
Awesome. I always thank you again. Thanks everyone for asking questions coming along as well. So give up for Jess again. Thank you so much. I'm just going to end the recording here. Thank you.